Thank you, Maze, for indulging me in moving through that image and talking a lot about different kinds of options and different ways that we could frame this. And I'm wondering, for those of us who might be thinking right now, I have a set curriculum I have to go through. Is this going to decrease the rigor of the course? Can I get them to pass the midterm if they're spending a lot of time on these kind of reflection spaces? Or I really can't shift from this set curriculum. This is what I teach. This is what they're going to be assessed. Do you have suggestions for instructors who might be feeling that way or feeling like this kind of flexibility or creating these options might not work with the way they structure their course?
Yeah. So there are two aspects to this question. The first one is there's this myth of if trauma informed means you compromise the content or the rigor. And what trauma informed approach does is that it creates the environment where students have an optimal, we're increasing the capacity for learning. So we can challenge them. So we can notice, if we go back to my example of working with the student who was triggered by evolution, I didn't say, well, you don't need to, I'll give you a different assignment. No, I still covered evolution, but I gave options. I helped the student feel safe so I could challenge her with the concept of evolution. So there is that. So the other point is, it's important for the faculty member to themselves feel safe to be able to go into these topics of let's interrogate the race issue within this, let's interrogate the power, let's interrogate, right? If they don't feel safe for a variety of reasons, perhaps they are a faculty of color, perhaps they are a junior faculty and they feel like, what's going to happen if I don't do a good job? Right. Or then that's going to impact their ability to thrive in teaching this topic, right? They have to feel safe to be vulnerable. Okay, they have to feel safe to make decisions about the curriculum. And let's be honest, in the academy, I think a lot of our colleagues, especially adjunct faculty members, perhaps don't have that leverage, don't feel empowered to say, you know what, I am going to change the curriculum in a way that I give this more time than this right here. So part of this trauma-informed, it's not just trauma-informed teaching, it's trauma-informed education, where the faculty member feels empowered by the chair or the dean. Or so what I would say, for example, to a faculty member that says, I don't have time. I know this is important, but I don't have time. I say, all right, what can you do to still acknowledge it? Can you give the option of doing something online? Perhaps they could do a discussion. Perhaps they could do on a Post-it note, they could write a reflection. Perhaps you can write your own reflection and post it online and say, this is my reflection. I invite you to, in the upcoming days, to continue to reflect on this image as it relates to the current moment with racial violence, with this or that. So what we don't want to do is completely ignore these issues, because that can be wounding to a lot of the students. Again, we leave them with the uncertainty of, why didn't the teacher bring this up? Do they not care? Do they not see it? And then what happens is, then I start asking the question, do I belong in this space, right? If the teacher doesn't see this issue as part of this image, and this issue happens to be impacting my community and my family.
And I think that I'm glad that you brought up kind of the different spaces where this could occur, this messaging can occur. It doesn't necessarily need to take up class time in a lecture. Maybe you can acknowledge, allude to it, and it lives in a discussion board, or it's somewhere else and activates the whole kind of space of the classroom, the virtual classroom. Or we can use these virtual spaces when we're back in person, or for those of you who are in person already. I think this is a really important takeaway, that we should think about our instructor presence and our instructor voice as permeating through all of those spaces as well. So it goes back again to that key concept of community. And I wanted to return to a point we addressed much earlier in our conversation, which is also thinking about the ways that maybe communal looking or thinking together about difficult content or coming together as a class could be activated to be restorative, could be activated to encourage kind of hope. And I'm always so happy when I read your pieces in Inside Higher Ed that you're calling on your philosophy background. And it's so clear to me that you're always thinking about humanity and the human piece of all this at the core. And so I welcome you to comment on how we might think as art educators about using this communal space of looking together, of discussing together, to also be restorative in this.
So, I wrote that article back in March called Hope Matters. And it was written to invite educators to impart optimism to their students. And it was written I wrote it thinking that we would be over the pandemic by the fall. And what happened is, no, we're still enduring its ugliness. And so I will be very honest, during the summer, I had moments and days where I could even envision like trying to grasp, to hold on to hope, and it was difficult. And part of that is the community, as you said, right? There wasn't that community that reinforces our sense of, our sense of meaning and purpose. So what I want to say is that hope is important. Hope is critical. Hope is the word for hope in the Arabic language. Amal comes from the same root as the word for pain, alam, and it's just switching the words. And so in order for us to really use hope, we have to acknowledge the pain. We have to really negotiate with that pain. And it's messy, it's still ongoing. When we grieve, it's really working with that pain. And when we grieve in silence, in isolation, it's so much more paralyzing. When we grieve in community to negotiate with that pain, there is a sense of power that we can feel, and it's coming from the community. So what I'm trying to say is that it is important to leverage that power of the community to walk through the grief, and also to start to interrogate this notion of hope beyond the linguistic meaning. Mm-hmm. What does it mean in action? What does it mean to transcend hope when we are in the midst of adversities? What I do is I use poetry a lot. That's what works for me. Poetry that is almost presents the contradiction of the despair and the hope, the unknown and the future. And what I see it does, it allows me to grieve, to cry, and it also allows me to wonder. And so I think that contradictions for me, honoring both sides, helps me heal. It's so much more powerful when I bring that poem and I say, let's talk about it. Let's interrogate it. Because your experience of that poem, when I see that, oh, it is also making you cry and smile, it reinforces my experience.
Mhm.
And that reinforcement, one of the things it does is, oh, there is a connection, right? When I look and I smile and we are far from each other, the brain can still feel that connection, and it helps me calm down. It helps me feel less I am all alone, but I am in community. How do we leverage that community? The art is so important. The brain loves creativity. The brain loves stories. The brain loves colors. And so let us make stories, make art, make disrupt the canonical narrative, if you will, of content and rigor and and competition and the individual over the community, the care, the well-being, the beauty, right? I think the teachers have such a powerful role in forging that path of community-centered education.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't say it any better. So I will say that when we all switched to remote teaching, it was a joy to hear from my students as we were learning together and looking together. It was this moment of um, kind of normalcy and community and collaboration, and just this complete opposite of this isolation that so many of us are facing. I know I'm facing. And so I think it's a good place to end our conversation and thinking about this is very heavy content, and we want to do our best to handle this responsibly, but also part of our role is to guide our classes together as a community, and nothing has more power to bring people together than the arts. So so we're all in a wonderful place to think about this. So Maze, thank you so much for really cementing our conversation around trauma, telling us a lot about what's actually happening to our students right now physiologically, things that I'm sure we've all encountered, but are now all the more empowered to help support and accommodate as we move forward, because the trauma of this moment is not ending immediately or anytime soon. And so this is a really important conversation. So thank you so much again for your time and for lending your expertise. And
Thank you. I'm very grateful to have had this space and conversation with you.